How do we keep feeding a growing population while at the same time regenerating life on Earth? That's a very complicated question, but also a very exciting one because there's so many promising solutions out there. I decided to start this podcast because I was tired of hearing about how bad things are, and I wanted to focus instead on how good things could be. This episode was made in partnership with Soil Capital. I'm your host, Raphael, and this is the Deep Seed Podcast. My guest today is Emilie de Morteuil, a health and sustainability expert with a particular focus on agroecology. Hi, Emilie.
Hi, Raphael.
Could you start by maybe introducing yourself?
Yes. So I am Emilie. I've grown up in the countryside. So I'm used to live around farms, and since very young, I've always been very sensitive to food. Actually, my mom was a great cooker, and she only used to buy products from the organic market. So I could meet actually some farmers, and I was in a very good connection with food and environment. But I decided to study something quite generic. I studied management. I did some normal first jobs in consulting firms, and it's already been 10 years. I've been to some conferences to listen to people that were inspiring and giving us some great news, like he tried to do. And one of them was actually talking about agroecology as the solution to feed not only the countries from the south, but also countries from the north. And I had never heard about agroecology, so I tried to understand what it means. I've bought some books. I've also listened to audios, to movies and documentaries. And I've discovered that there was already a training, an university training around agroecology and sustainable food systems given in Belgium. So I've studied this for a year, and then I've completed with another master in environment and nutrition, because one of my ideas was really to make the link between soil health and the health of what we eat, the micronutrient component of the food we eat. So I wanted to know if there was a correlation or not. 5 years ago, I decided to quit my job and to become self-independent. I've started to give some advices to big industry, more in the agro-food industry, regarding sustainability. So I really wanted to make them change and be more and more sustainable, but also sustainable regarding food products. And I've decided very recently, that was only last year, to create with other people an NGO called the House of Agroecology in these regards.
Great. We're going to discuss the House of Agroecology in more detail in this conversation. But before we get there, since you've been working in the food industry for a number of years now, I'd like to know what your assessment is of the current global food systems, and maybe more specifically in Belgium, since I believe that's where you have the most experience and knowledge.
Yes, true. It is not easy to be very positive about our food systems. They've been very industrialized. We've specialized a lot in each country. So each country, the last 4 decades, I would say, have really specialized in what they can very well do. And countries like Belgium, we are famous for potatoes, for example. That means that we actually produce a lot of potatoes. So big transforming industries of potatoes are making products that are going to be exported mainly. And that's where we arrived in a system that is very on a global scale, where we import products, we export products. We also import a lot of inputs in order to produce, which means fertilizers, pesticides, a lot of chemicals. But really to understand why we are there today in this very global system where everything is interconnected, but because it works in a way where we produce too much at the end, because we know we waste 1/3 of the food production, which is a nonsense because there are still countries where there are a lot of hunger. But we produce too much because we really over-consumed or overproduced on our lands in order to be very good in what we do, thanks or because of genetic, because of the fertilizers we have to use. And so we didn't know what to do with those products, so we started to export and to make some deals and some exchange with other countries. But today we are arriving to a system where it's maybe not working anymore. And we've seen that also in the news very recently. There have been a lot of manifestations saying that they do not want this system anymore because it was maybe a good solution after World War II, but it was a long time ago, and today it's not working the same.
And why is it not working anymore?
Because of many environmental problems and also health problems. On the environmental point of view, we have big issues with global warming. We are emitting too much carbon, and we know that one of the main sources is food in general, because we are indeed producing too much input that needs some gas for the production.
So when we say inputs, just to be clear, we mean
fertilizers.
Anything that we bring from outside the farm to inside the farm,
exactly.
including fertilizers, including anything else.
Exactly.
Fossil fuel.
Fossil fuel is used indeed to make fertilizers. That's why we actually produce a lot of CO2 in order to make fertilizers. And as you said, we actually import it from outside of the farm. Because before, a long time ago, we had some animals on the farm, animals that were actually producing the fertilizer. And after World War II, when we really wanted to specialize, to be very good on what we do, to specialize ourselves in only one way, we did catastrophic things, but we didn't know that at the beginning. So we actually used all the chemicals we had from the war. We have imported a lot of machines from America. And we also remove all the trees that were between the parcels in order to make it much more simple for the big machines to come. We removed trees, so that was catastrophic for biodiversity. We imported a lot of pesticide, but also fertilizers. And we stopped with the animals that were actually in the pasture. We decided it was easier not to have animals. So we actually disconnected from nature. But this, we had no idea it would have such impacts. So if we go back to the impact of today, after those decisions we made 60 years ago, it is a problem of global warming because of those inputs we use. It is a problem of loss of biodiversity because we have less trees, less diversity. We have specialized also a lot in genetic. So we modified also the genetic of the seeds we are using. And regarding health problems, we've never had so much problem with disease from pollution and also obesity, for example.
Right. So we started a new model of agriculture some 60 years ago, and with good intention, producing more food to feed the world. And we found a system that was really efficient at producing a lot of food very quickly at the time. But what we didn't realize is that down the line, now 60 years later, we have all of the problems that you just detailed. Right. And so now we need a solution to that problem. We need to change the way we do agriculture. And I know you're specialized in agroecology, and so I'm guessing that you believe that agroecology is a key solution to that problem. Is that right?
Yeah, indeed.
Could you explain why do you think that is?
When I discovered agroecology, it really looked like the solution because it means that you go back to work with nature instead of against nature. There are many principles in agroecology. As defined today, there are 13 principles, not only on the agronomic point of view and environmental point of view, but also on the social and the economical aspects. which are very important also in the definition of agroecology. In the agronomic aspect, by actually having much longer rotation, by treating well the soil, with reducing tillage, for example, by bringing more diversity, more different crops and varieties, much more diversification in the sources of revenue, by bringing back animals on the farm and being more autonomous, we are already tackling a lot of problems with climate change, but also with loss of biodiversity. So all those agronomic point of views and principles in agroecology can really help us with all the problems we are facing. We know we need to reduce the CO2 emissions in the coming years. And this is one of the main big solutions.
Right. And it sounds incredible because it has all of these benefits and it solves all of these problems. But a lot of people will say, but can it feed the world? Can it be as efficient at producing food on a large scale as conventional systems?
But then the question would be, do we need to feed the world? I mean, you've said that we wanted to end hunger after the World War II. It was not really to end hunger in the world. It was specifically in the European countries where we had wars and many problems with food. But very quickly, we started to produce way much more than we needed. Mm-hmm. So we became exporter, and we started to indeed feed the world and other countries. But do they really need us? I don't know. Do we need to be really fed by others? I don't know. We've been fed a lot in Belgium by Spain, for example. All the fruits and veggies are very often coming from Spain. But there might be no more possibility for Spain to produce for us in the coming decades regarding all the scarcity problem with water.
So the truth is we can't really feed ourselves, or can we?
If you look at the Belgium scale, no, we don't have enough surface, and we cannot produce everything that we eat. At the European level, or with our countries next to us, yes, we could. But as I said in the beginning, there is already too much food produced because we are wasting 1/3 of the food we produce. So there is already enough. We've seen a lot of numbers saying that we have enough to feed 10 billion of people. We are only 8. So I think that it wouldn't be a problem regarding do we have enough to feed, but we could concentrate on what we can produce with agroecology. Indeed, if we decide to produce the same crop in the agroecology principle, but only one crop, I don't think we could have the same yields that we have with genetic fertilizers, etc. But the principle of agroecology is to produce multiple crops simultaneously, to do association within the crops, and therefore we have actually much more kilocalories in one parcel because we have way more diversity in what we produce.
Okay, so you have 1 hectare of farmed land, and instead of just growing one of the same monocrop throughout, you will have 2 or more crops growing together. Individually, you don't yield as much as just the one monocrop, but if you count all 2, 3 or more crops growing together, you can do much more. Is that what
you can have much more in terms of kilocalories?
Calories,
because we talk a lot about hunger, but we forget also that there is this hidden hunger that we've already heard of. It's about the fact that people are eating a lot, but they are lacking a lot of nutrients. So it makes no sense, actually. And why so? Because we have discovered that there are actually less nutrients in the food that we are eating today and producing today versus 60 years ago. There might be less vitamins of iron in the products we produce. So if with agroecology, we are rebuilding soils that we get to much healthier soils, they will also feed the plant better. They will bring more nutrients within the plant. So at the end, the plant will have more vitamins, more minerals, so it will feed us better.
So not only we can produce more calories per hectare, but if we actually look at the nutrients themselves, we can produce much more because the plants feed each other and the ecosystem being healthy grows a healthy crop,
Yes.
healthy food. Is that possible? Can we measure the nutrition that comes out of a field?
It's very recently done. There've only been studies that are comparing conventional farming versus organic farming versus regenerative agriculture that have been produced scientifically based only the last years. And they are showing that there is indeed a big difference between regenerative practices, a regenerated soil, and a conventional soil. So it is shown that a soil with more nutrients, more life also, is gonna produce better nutrients within the plants. There are some machines that are being produced, but they are in construction, I think, very small one that can be used to actually analyze with infrared, to analyze the components of the plant. And I think that in the coming years, we will be able to very quickly scan a plant and see the quantity of nutrients it has.
And if we can do that, then it becomes a major factor, a selling point, I guess. If you sell a product that has much more nutrition than the one next to it, but that product is more expensive per kilo maybe, but if you count per unit of nutrition, I don't know how you would measure that exactly, but I guess that's also a talking point. How do you quantify what is more and less nutritious?
We are not there yet. I hope we will get there in the coming years, because indeed health is a better argument in order to convince consumers than environment. Unfortunately, it is more important for them to be in good health than to live in a healthy environment. So I think that it will be at one point a good way to valorize the production. But we don't have yet the money-wise relation between the products and at what cost should we sell it.
But do you believe that it's something that farmers should take into consideration? It's like an investment for the future, because right now we don't have the tools yet to measure that, but we will sometimes in the future. And so if you take care of the soil, of the biodiversity, of the diversity of crops that you grow, and you grow healthier crops with more nutrition in them, they will one day in the near future be rewarded for that benefit?
They are already rewarded today for sustainable practices on the farm and soil health. There are already some scheme that can be used in order to valorize what they are doing better with the soil. Maybe they will be for healthier claims also. But I think the most important for farmers, if we are looking at the instant moment, it is investing in soil health is actually investing in their source of revenue. It is investing in the source of revenue of the next generation. So this is the best argument I think that we should actually use, is convince them, but most of them are already convinced, but we really need to insist on that by really investing in soil health, it is investing in their own business.
It seems like a no-brainer when I hear you talk that transitioning to more agroecological practices is a win across the board for farmers, because it produces more per hectare if you combine crops together. It heals the soil, it makes it more fertile, it makes the farm more resilient, it produces healthier foods. It is, I guess, more exciting also for the farmer and more rewarding. And there's so many benefits. But why is it then so difficult for farmers to transition to this kind of practices? It feels like still it's only a very small minority of farmers transitioning. So there must be a reason why it is harder than it sounds like.
Indeed, it's hard because the transition also has a cost. And while a farmer wants to make a transition, he will need to take some risks. And it's not logical that the farmer takes those risks alone. And today it is like that. So we are asking a lot to the farmers without yet rewarding them. So because there is no consensus within the whole sector, from the farm to the fork, with the industries, with the government, regarding how to actually reward the farmer for this, how to take part in the risk they are taking. If we don't find yet the solution or this way of working or this new economic ecosystem, we are not going to get there. So that's why the transition is still slow today, is because there is not yet models at the economic point of view that allows the farmers to take those risks. So we need a lot of changes at the government side of view, but also in the industry.
Just a quick pause to tell you that this podcast was made in partnership with a company called Soil Capital. They're a company that promotes a transition to regenerative agriculture by financially rewarding farmers who improve the health of their soils. If you're interested in learning more about them, I will leave a link in the description of this episode. Thank you. You are one of the co-founders of the House of Agroecology. And if I'm not mistaken, that is one of the missions of this NGO you co-founded.
Yes, it is. We wanted to build bridges between the different stakeholders of the food system, from farm to fork. So we wanted to bring together the producers, the transformers, the industries, the retailers, the restoration, also the restaurant, but also the agronomic experts and the research center. And together, we want to find a system where this transition can be accelerated. That's really the mission of the House of Agroecology, is to accelerate the transition towards agroecology. And one way to do it is by talking the same languages, is by sharing the risk and the value towards the whole supply chain, not only at the end of it. It's also by giving some advices to farmers. They need actually agronomic advices too.
When you say sharing the risks across the whole supply chain, not at the end, you mean the end is the farmer?
No, at the end of the supply chain, which is more the industry or the retailer, they are actually taking more value of the products. Okay. Whereas the value should be spread in the whole chain so that we have more revenue for the farmers. That's one of the main reasons why the farmers today are very angry, is that they don't receive money for what they are producing. And this is not fair. This is really not fair. So there is a big problem. But if we ask the farmer to take even more risk with the transition towards agroecology, then we should pay them for that. We should actually train them, pay them, support them, maybe insure them. There should be really a lot of systems.
I'm curious about insurance, because rewarding them for the risk and the effort they do is great, but we needed them to take that risk in the first place. So is there a way we can protect them, insure them in case anything goes wrong?
I think insurance companies should really take practices like agroecology into account while they give insurance. But the banks should also, for example, give access to loans easier when they are investing in agroecology, not only in huge machine or in big investment, but also in those practices.
But what if the bank says, that sounds great, but I have to look after my investors and the people who give me money, and this is not a sound investment for me right now, it's too risky? What forces the banks to be so helpful in this regard?
I hope they won't have any choices anymore with the new rules on the international level, but also at the European level. The new reporting rules regarding extra financial reports, but also the SBTI or Scope 3 rules, are going to force them to prove that they are making real sustainable investment. And if they don't, then I think they will be punished at one point. I hope so. So they have no choice. And I hope it's going to change in the minds more and more, even though we still have a lot of way there. But they start to be conscious about their role. And I hope that the investors or the consumers behind are also starting to understand their role in this situation.
So legislations are key to this whole process, and because once legislations are set, forcing banks, insurance companies, food companies to make certain types of investments and follow certain rules, then the whole chain follows after them. What do you think about current EU and Belgian legislations? Are we going in the right direction?
If you were asking that just a few weeks ago, I would have maybe another opinion than today after the last strike that we had from the farmers. European was not going in a good direction by thinking about signing big deals like Mercosur. It makes no sense at all. We should really stop with this ultra-mondialization. We went too far. We really need to go back to the source, and we should really, the legislation should be in favor of local production. For example, I think that in Belgium, we shouldn't pay the VAT, the taxes, on local fruits and veggies, but we should actually pay taxes on products coming from abroad, especially outside of Europe. We should force the supermarkets, for example, to have a minimum of local products, like a percentage that should be really obliged. So I think that Europe there still need to make a lot of work. The Green Deal that was signed a few years ago was a good step in the direction towards agroecology and organic agriculture. If we go back, if we erase some of the new rules, it might be very risky for our situation regarding, for example, global warming. So I hope that we will continue to go in the direction of more environmental legislation. But at the same way, we also need to stop those agreements like Mercosur.
Another related topic that you have expertise in is health, regarding diets and foods. And I'd like to know if you think that the model that is proposed by agroecology is aligned with what is an ideal diet for human beings.
Totally, because agroecology promotes diversity in the varieties that we use, which we really need for good health. It is also based on soil health, and it is also based on less transformation. And because we've been transforming food a lot, like we have ultra transformed food since the last decade, we've experienced many diseases and many problems facing health. So the agroecology ecosystem is really, for me, a key to promote better health.
How do we make sure that people make better food choices? How do we help them towards those healthier choices that are both good for the environment, but for their health as well?
It's multi-factor. We need to reconnect consumers with how it is produced. I think every consumer should know how it grows, how food grows. There are still many young and less young people ignoring everything about production, about the plant, about is it a tree, is it a plant?
Should we teach this in school?
Of course, definitely.
Yeah.
In school, we should teach the environmental basics, the agriculture basics. I think agriculture should really be one course that we have in our courses at least once. Mm-hmm. And also nutrition. We should have courses regarding nutrition and cooking sessions. It should be in school. It can be in the municipalities also. If the schools that are allowed to do it, if they have the space, they should have their own garden also and start doing gardening with the kids.
It seems obvious. It's key to life. Growing food and farming and what we eat impacts directly our well-being in our lives. And it's strange that we are not being taught any of that during our school curriculum. But do you see any improvement in that regard at schools?
In Belgium, there are, like in France and other countries, there are schools that are trying to implement a new kitchen where they are actually cooking with local products. Schools that are more in the open system, not in the public system or in the open system, they also receive session where the kids will have to cook for themselves and for their peers, and then it changes every day. So it happens already for some schools. It should also be normally implemented in the new courses that we have in Belgium in the coming decade, but it's very slow. But still, it doesn't make any connection yet with the farmer. And that's something very important. It's not only about health, because health, according to me, goes through the production also, and also to mental health. And if we want to focus on mental health, for example, of the farmer, but also of the consumers, we should really make them go outside way more and make connection with the farmer. We should really push people to go and talk with farmers, to go and ask them some questions, to maybe suggest some helps, because some of them might have some helps or need some social connection to buy their products at the farm. It will very reward them for what they make, and convince them to continue what they're doing.
How do we make that happen?
I have some ideas, but it's not well concrete. It's also because I was contacted by one school who suggests to organize internship with the students from the last year in the secondary school, internship in farms that are in transition towards agroecology. And so they say, could we find some farms that would be open to welcome some students between 16 and 18 years old to come work there for a week to help the farmer, but also to learn the process, etc. And it gave me the idea that this could be something that becomes common and that we all implement in every school, so that all students, once in their lifetime, will have worked in a farm for at least a week. And so they will have experience this connection with the ground, with the soil, with the farmer, with the products, with the animals also. Maybe we will create there the new generation of farmers, because we will definitely lack farmers in the coming decades, that's for sure. We already have the numbers on that. It will also maybe change the mindsets regarding food, regarding cooking, etc. So I think this could be, according to me, one of the way to get there for the next generation.
In this case, the school contacted you to do this program. So it's just one school. But then you mentioned it would be great if all schools, all children in the whole country, well, talking about Belgium specifically, but it would be the same idea in other countries, right? So who has the power to do that?
The schools have the power. If they want to invite NGOs or associations to come and present a project, or to come and give a workshop regarding soil, for example, they all have this opportunity to do it. There are many associations in Belgium that are offering for free, sometimes, free workshop on specific topics on climate change. We have coach regarding climate, and they are organizing session in schools. So the schools, the power, the organization power of the school, but also the parents can suggest that to the class. So I think it's more the will. It doesn't need to be pushed by the legislation.
Great. So anyone listening right now, if you're a student, a parent, a teacher, get in touch with Emilie and try and get something organized so that your kids can go and work on a farm and get a feel for what it is like to grow food and to be closer to nature, and maybe, start building the next generation of farmers practicing agroecology. But that's the thing I was thinking about. If you bring kids to the farm, you obviously don't want to bring them to a very big industrial farm. I guess you want to bring them to a more regenerative, agroecological farm somewhere with a lot of biodiversity, animals, birds, something that inspires them, right? Is there many farms like that in Belgium?
Not many. It's not the majority, definitely. It's not a third. of the farms that we have. But there are some pioneers that are actually practicing agroecology sometimes since 15, 20 years. So it's been known for a long time. And there are some that are not communicating about the practices. So it would be easy to find a farm for every school. I have no doubt about that. I would love to if there are some schools contacting us. And it will maybe motivate other farms to do it too.
Well, if it does happen and you're starting this project, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I would love to contribute in any way I can. Sounds like an amazing project. Education and kids is the source of life of everything, and it's definitely one of the key way we can improve things for the future. So
yes, I believe so.
I have just a really small favor to ask. I noticed that less than 20% of people listening to this podcast are currently following the Deep Seed on Spotify or Apple Podcast. And it would actually really help the podcast grow if you could take just 5 seconds right now to click on the Deep Seed page and hit the follow button. Thank you so much. I'd like to come back to the House of Agroecology. We started discussing it earlier and then we got sidetracked very quickly into a lot of super interesting discussions. But yeah, let's come back to it for a minute.
Yeah.
So you're bringing together a lot of different stakeholders from the entire supply chain, from the producers, the farmers, all the way to the retailers. And then what happens? You help them transition to a more agroecological supply chain?
Yeah, we have different services. So in different pillars, for example, we would give some advice to the industry. In another one, we would give trainings. Either we organize trainings for the farmers together with experts in our ecosystem, or trainings to the industries, because people today do not understand what is agroecology. And if they don't, especially in the industry, they won't do any efforts. So we also need to train them.
So if I am, let's say, for example, a big supermarket chain, why would I come and join the House of Agroecology? What's in it for me?
You would meet all the supermarket chain at first in the House of Agroecology. You would be able to exchange with the others about the best practices. You would meet maybe farmers or other industry looking to create new supply chain and maybe being able to create new supply chain together. And you would receive some help from the House of Agroecology regarding communication towards your end consumers. Because today, even though we produce agroecology products, if the consumer doesn't understand what it is, he won't buy it. So the supermarket also needs support in that regard.
And do you see a lot of interest from these big retailers, big supermarkets, to join this initiative and to create these new kind of supply chains?
Yes, more and more. And specifically the last 2 years, we have seen really an increase of interest from the big supermarket and from the industry, because they see that the consumer wants something else. They also see that we have achieved the end of a system, that the farmers doesn't agree anymore with how it works today, the contracts, etc. So they are looking for innovation and looking for solutions. And now I really think they understood that agroecology was a very important solution also for them.
Is resilience also a key factor in them being interested in agroecology, knowing
Definitely.
that the supply chains are going to start becoming more disrupted as the climate changes over the coming decades?
Yeah, definitely, because there are, from one point of view, more and more demands from the consumer, because they want to have more healthy products, more local products. And so the big supermarket working with very long supply chain with products coming from very far, they know they have also to protect a little bit the farmers here in Belgium and in the close country. So they're looking for supply chain with Belgium, and so they need to produce to be very much more in relationship with the stakeholders in Belgium. On the other side, there are also a lot of new European laws coming into place that are going to force them to go towards much more environmental practices. And one of them is agroecology. So the supermarket and the industry are also being forced by the economical point of view, by the European laws, by the new taxonomy. And this is an extra argument to go towards the transition of agroecology.
Okay, so I'm still the supermarket, and I realize that I need to start new supply chains to get more agroecological products, or products that have been grown in a sustainable, regenerative way. I know I have to do that in the coming years. I don't have the supply chain yet. I don't have the knowledge. So by coming to the House of Agroecology, I get put in touch with different stakeholders to maybe together start forming these new supply chains.
Yeah.
I get access to knowledge.
You
talked about the knowledge hub.
Mm-hmm. To knowledge, but also to stakeholders. So people that are really specialized in creating a new supply chain, of transforming the supply chain, and there they will meet those actors indeed.
And what does it mean to join the House of Agroecology? What do these stakeholders have to do in order to join?
First, there is an engagement charter that is quite strict, that is also publicly available on our website. And every members, either a farmer, an industry, a supermarket, needs to sign this charter in order to be a member of the House of Agroecology. So they need to respect what the charter says. For the big industry and supermarkets, we are asking them to be member for a minimum of 3 years, because we know you cannot make a transition in less than 3 years, of course. It even asks more, but for them, it will need a lot of transformation in their own supply chain. So we ask for engagement from their side, and we ask them to train their team. We ask them to really be part of the transition with their own supply chain. Once they are member, they participate to the governance of the House of Agroecology, because we have decided to create a very broad and heterogeneous governance, a bit working on the collective intelligence point of views and principles. So we are also trying to represent every stakeholder in the different entities, in the General Assembly, and also in the Board of Directors. So in the Board of Directors, there are members representing the producers, the farmers, representing also the unions, people representing the supermarkets, people representing the transformation, and representing the experts. And that makes it very lively, of course, but also very interesting, because we have many different points of views in the Board of Directors and in the General Assembly, and all of them have a vote, a right to vote. So it's important that we work together. That's really one of the principles of agroecology, is about cooperation and synergies. And we find that in the governance. So when someone wants to become a member, he needs to participate, of course, in the different meetings we're organizing, but also in the General Assembly.
You mentioned earlier the importance of politicians and policymaking as a really powerful and important tool to facilitate the transition from a very extractive and destructive model of agriculture towards an agroecological system that is much more regenerative and is better for the environment, for the farmers, for people, for health, and all of these things that we've discussed already. And I was wondering, if you could send a message to politicians, what would it be?
There are different things to say. I'm not the experts for that, but I think one of the tips that politicians could put into place is, first of all, to give access to farmers to training and to advice. Today, the farmers need to pay. If they want an agronomic advice from an expert, he needs to pay, and he doesn't have enough money or time for that, and they are not enough agronomic experts. So the politicians should start by making what we call checks for training or checks for advices, and make it available to farmers. So the farmers could use this check to use it with any agronomic he wants to, or any training he wants to follow, to be able to make his practices evolved. That's one thing I think that should be put into place, and very fast. The politicians should also promote and force the supermarket and the industry to promote local production much more. They should force them by making maybe less taxes paid on the local products. Let's start with fruits and vegetables. We should pay less taxes on fruits and vegetables coming from Belgium versus coming from other countries, especially coming from countries outside of Europe. So there we should also promote our own production towards the consumers by forcing the supermarkets in this way, or by helping the farmers by reducing the taxes on those products. We can think about a lot of other ideas. The public that has much less money, that is much more vulnerable, for example, are the ones that are eating less healthy food because they do not have access to organic food or to very good local products that are very nutritious. So the most vulnerable people have the less qualitative food, which makes it worse after for health problem, etc. So this specifically vulnerable public should be helped by the politicians with also maybe special checks or special help. The food aids should be coming from local healthy products also. So those are some ideas I think that could be put into practice very, very easily. I don't think it should be complicated to organize trainings, checks, etc. for either the farmers or checks for the consumers. I think this can be very fast.
It makes sense to me. This idea of checks for healthy, locally produced foods. Maybe that has a cost. But that cost is probably compensated by the health benefits that you get from eating that healthier food versus heavily processed, unhealthy foods.
Yeah, and I think you can start also with the collectivities. There are many restaurants in administration, and all the restaurants in the schools, for example, could be supported by using local products and organic food, etc. And there we should focus also because it's an important public. The consumers from the administration and from the schools are very important. So if you support those canteen to work and cook with local and organic products, that's an enormous step. But if we want to change the kitchen and the product used in the kitchen of the schools, for example, it's not by only forcing them to do it, because it would be way too complex. It already exists with a kind of a label that we call sustainable canteen in Belgium. You have that in Belgium. But it's not working perfectly because it's not about only putting a label again. It's about helping the kitchen and helping the schools to find the local producers and to help them in the supply chain again. So we are facing exactly the same problem that we are facing with the supermarkets. It's about the supply chain, finding the producers and putting it to place.
Do you already have within the House of Agroecology, you mentioned that you had a lot of different stakeholders. Do you have people from the public sector in those stakeholders?
Not yet. We are talking with one working a lot with the restaurant in the public sector, etc. But I think it will take a lot of months to really be able to sensibilize and help in the strategy. So hopefully by the end of the year, yes, I hope so.
That would be great because it's clearly an area that has a lot of potential.
An impact.
An impact in involving these stakeholders in those supply chains and helping them find a way to get more products that are healthier, more sustainable. It only makes sense, I think, with public money.
Definitely. It would be enormous.
Agroecology, can we imagine every piece of farmland in the world being transitioned to agroecological systems? Is that something desirable even?
It is desirable, but we have multiple type of agroecology farming system and levels, as we said in the beginning. So being like the perfect agroecology on every aspect of agroecology. I think it would take maybe 1 or 2 generations. So it's not what we should focus on like now in the midterm. But we definitely can make a transition for the most of the hectares and farms that we have in Belgium, but also in other countries. There are other countries that would be more flexible and where it would fit easier and better. Countries where the chains are shorter, it is there easier to make the transition. In industrialized countries like ours, where the chain are very long, it takes much more movements, much more changes towards different stakeholders. So it takes longer time.
Are you optimistic? Do you see our societies evolving towards a majority of regenerative and agroecological farms? I don't know, in the next 15, 20 years, is that possible?
Of course, I should be. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have created the NGO, the House of Agroecology, because one of the purpose is to be able to help a third of the farmers in Belgium by 2030 towards the first steps in agroecology. So we have like big ambitions. So we are hoping this will be feasible by 2030. So yes, I'm optimistic, but there's still, of course, a lot to do. And I see much more people talking about agroecology. Those podcasts like you're doing is one testimonials of it. It shows that people want to hear about agroecology.
What I find so exciting about it is it makes sense. There's a business case there. You have a model that is healthier for the environment, that is helping the farmer having a better livelihood. And it makes sense from an economic perspective as well. And therefore, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be able to scale that and accelerate the scaling of that system. So that's what I find so exciting about it. And I really hope that we're going to see a lot of change in the next decade. Mm-hmm. Well, let's wait and see.
I think there is maybe one constraint regarding, as you say, the business case, is that we are a bit lacking finance in this transition. We need finance, we need other companies, insurance, banks to invest in the transition towards agroecology, to invest in the new supply chain, to create new supply chain that needs maybe new machines. And there we need investors. And it is a sector that is not very sexy for investors because it is a long-term investing, which is not very appealing for most of them. So there we also need a change of mindset with the future investors in those supply chains.
Do you have any recommendation for people listening who would like to support the transition to agroecological farming systems and support farmers and more sustainable food supply chains in general?
Go outside, go meet a farm, go in a weekend, maybe to just visit, go on the countryside and try to understand what is growing on the grass, what is it, what kind of plant, why do we have those plants in Belgium. So just reconnecting with what we are making and how we are making it, and trying to maybe meet a farmer, because the farmer could be selling products at his own farm. Is great because it makes the connection with nature and the connection with the farmer. And you can be much more sure that the product will be qualitative. That's for the people who have the opportunity to go in the countryside, for example. Mm-hmm. But for others, I think that we have plenty of choices in Belgium today. We have different type of supermarket. We have different type of small market. We have market also. They are in different parts of the cities. The farmers coming directly to the city and selling their products one day per week in different places. That's also there an occasion to meet a farmer or producers and to buy very qualitative products.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Emilie. Thank you for your time. I'm going to conclude the conversation here, but I really, really appreciated you taking the time, and I love the conversation, and I'm sure that people listening will do as well. So thank you and take care.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.